It is really nice when you can connect with people that are in the same life stage, that just get it, that don't feel like they have to try to create something to make you feel more comfortable. They're just like, no, we're in the same space. We're here together. So the holidays are upon us. Sleigh bells are ringing, mistletoe's jingling, and lots of folks are getting cozy in front of the fire with their honey, enjoying a hot cup of cocoa, maybe on a bearskin rug.
Ooh, I love that image.
Who knows? But not me, because I'm single. So when you're single during the holidays, sometimes that sense of excitement for togetherness, being with your partner, being with loved ones, it can feel a little bit different. I know it does to me. I don't know about you.
100%. I think that was such a good contrast you just painted. And I think that's a real feeling that a lot of single people, single women, single men too, according to our research, fall prey to.
Absolutely. So eHarmony, famed dating site that's been around forever, one of the OGs, they did a study of a little over 4,000 people, and they found that 71% of men admitted to feeling some sense of sadness or responsibility to have a partner, specifically during the holidays, which is interesting because the contrast of that was only 58% of women
Wait, that's really interesting.
reported feeling the same way. And I think it's because, this is just my feeling, women tend to have like richer communities in general and friend groups and maybe, places where they're tapped into some form of community. And I think if you have any community, it makes it easier to get through the holidays when you don't have a significant other. And so if you don't have that, I think that makes it really
It really hits you hard.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute, I have no one
Yeah.
to talk to and have real connections with. Men feel that way. I remember, that feeling though of sitting there and feeling sad is so relatable to me. I spent, I would say maybe half of my 30s feeling really lonely during the holiday season because I was one at the time. All of my friends I felt had moved on and had married and had kids and had their own, families and lives. My sisters were the same.
And your sisters all have kids, right?
My sisters all have kids.
Okay.
And suddenly it was just me by myself, like knocking around my house alone. And I remember even small things like going and getting a Christmas tree. I was like, oh, I'm going to go do that by myself. Dragging in a Christmas tree and decorating the Christmas tree by myself. And I thought at the time I was living in Virginia. I was living in Northern Virginia, and I thought that, the solution would be finding a partner. And I remember having this goal of like, I'm gonna make this happen for myself. Just like I had made happen all of my career goals.
Like you're gonna make a man happen?
Like I'm gonna make a man happen. And so I was like, I'm gonna do 2 dates a week until I like meet my man, right?
Okay, I'm exhausted just hearing that.
And so I remember this was my strategy, and I was in this really like, really honestly like a masculine, make it happen kind of a mindset. And one December night, this was probably it was a while ago, 2014, 2015. I'm driving home from a drink with the guy who I had dated previously and I was reconnecting with, hoping to have a second chance with him.
Have a little Christmas spark.
And I remember driving home after that drink, finding out that he had moved on with somebody else. And it just was, it was one of those, you're already feeling lonely from the holidays. You have these high hopes, and these high hopes are dashed, and you're driving home alone in the dark. And you plug in, I remember walking into my cold house and plugging in my Christmas tree lights that I had strung up myself, and I plopped down there on the floor just like looking around me for a few minutes, and I started to realize, you know what? not feeling lonely over the holidays cannot be dependent on me finding a partner.
Yeah.
And there are so many better ways to make myself feel more fulfilled, more enriched, more connected, more joyous during this time than like desperately trying to make my man happen.
Well, and also you have to realize or remember that like in trying to make a man happen, girl, what quality of man did you think you were gonna find?
No, I still had a high bar.
Okay. Because I know a lot of people that are like, I'm going to make it happen and I can't be by myself during the holidays. And then you meet the person that they found so that they're not by themselves.
Oh.
And I'm like, you would be so much better off by yourself than you are.
That 100%.
You know?
100%. Yeah. No, I was a little bit different. I still had a high bar, but I was like frantically trying to make it happen. And I think the key thing that I figured out was I was unable to make myself happy before that. And so the transformation that I went through personally was, well, regardless of who I have in my life, what partner I have in my life, or who I don't have in my life, like I've got to be able to have a rich community and connection and ways to enjoy the holiday season regardless.
Absolutely.
And I want to share some of those like shifts that I made in my life, and in the hopes that if you're listening and you're feeling the same way, which apparently 51% of women are, that it'll help you guys too.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So, what would you say are some of the things that you were able to shift that made it easier for you to start feeling like a little less lonely during the holidays and a little more tapped into community?
Yeah. Well, I think what you said it, like that 20% differential between men and women, like those women know what they're doing. Because I think we can create. So I think I started to realize that I had actually no friends that I was connected to at the time that were at my stage of life. So one of the big changes that I made was especially since I moved out to California, and even before that, I made it like a big intentional effort in my life to actually create friendships. Like you and I connected, and I'm like so grateful for our friendship.
Same.
And it was one of those things where I'm like, these are the type of connections and depth of relationship that is so important to create. And you got to find people that are in the similar life stage as you, because you can get along with like a whole lot of people. And I have great friends who are married with kids, but you don't have the same, if you're not in the same life stage, it's really hard to get that time spent together and get that depth of conversation because their minds are on something else.
Oh, yeah. And their expectations are like, I have married friends that have kids. I love them. They have a very specific family dynamic that they're living in.
Right.
And a lot of times to introduce a single person into that dynamic, it's almost like they either pity you or they like don't know what to do with you and they don't know and then they're like trying to introduce you to like some weirdo, like some weirdo friend who's a friend of a friend of a friend who's also single. And they're like, well, you're both like the same age and you're single. And so you should be together. And it's like, yeah, like it is really nice when you can connect with people that are in the same life stage, that just get it, that don't feel like they have to try to create something to make you feel more comfortable. They're just like, no, we're in the same space. We're here together.
And I do think that it changes when you're when we were in our 20s, everybody was getting married. And then you kind of have to go through this growth phase where, it's like growing pains where like, you're like, okay, wait, now all of my old circles are like married with kids. Now I'm in this like great unknown. And it's like, you got to actually go out there and make friends again and connect with people that have a similar life and lifestyle as you. So that was a huge thing that has started to change in my life and change my whole feeling of connectedness. Out here in LA, I have so many good friendships. And, the idea even during that great unknown time of me like hosting a Friendsgiving, for example, or something like that, was like, well, who am I going to invite over? All my married friends and their kids? Like that just wasn't going to, it just didn't seem right.
Doesn't sound right. Yeah.
And so like the theme of what I'm trying to say is like, it may sound cheesy to be like, you could go make friends, like, cause you feel like that should just happen naturally. But, when your friends are, you've met them in college or you met them at your, early job, or like when your first friend group has moved on, you have to be intentional about creating connections where you are now.
Absolutely. I love that. Is there anything else you would say that you've done?
Yeah, so that was my first thing. Let's see, what else have I done? So I talked about this in an earlier episode too, but I started to realize that you can actually take on, just like you take on leadership roles at work, you can take on leadership roles in your personal and private life. Like you can think about, which you, I think, have a different take on this because you may have been doing more of this before. I never really did much of that. And so what I started to realize was for me personally, I could start to host gatherings and invite people and be the connector instead of waiting on an invitation.
Okay.
And that mindset shift has been subtle but huge because you start to realize that most people are not. Most people are not the person that's going to put themselves out there and initiate a gathering. Or, because you're in new situations. Like, for example, I moved to LA and I joined a new gym, and I, in the past, wouldn't have been the one to initiate anything with people at the gym. This time I noticed like, oh, there's a few people that I think we would get along. And so I actually like had to say like, hey, do y'all want to go get brunch after the workout on Sunday? And, slowly start you developing these friendships by making the effort myself. And so that has been another shift in terms of like looking at myself as like, yeah, I can be the leader of my own social life.
Yeah, like you can be the master Friendsgiving host.
Yeah. And it feels so good too, because then you're like, hey, everybody does want to hang out with me.
Of course they do, obviously.
But when you're not used to that role, it's like a shocker.
Yeah. No, I get that. I totally get that. I mean, I would say my experience is slightly different.
All right, tell
So
us about yours.
I never really felt alone during the holidays because I have like a small immediate family. It's just me, my mom, my grandparents, and then like a much larger extended family. So tons of like second cousins, third cousins, but everyone is just cousin or aunt or uncle. Like I didn't even realize that a second cousin was a thing until I think maybe I was like 25. I was like, oh, everyone's not just cousin, So I had a really big extended family. And so for me, like every holiday season was going to the area that my extended family lives in, going to one of the family members' houses. There would always be someone who would cook a big, massive meal. And so we would just spend the day like hanging out, eating, playing games. And then that night, like some of the younger cousins that were in the same age group as me would all go to the movies. And so I was very used to like, that's my holiday and it's fun. And I know I'm going to be surrounded by family. I'm going to eat multiple plates of really good food. And so that was just always my experience. And then as I got older and, started moving a bit because I lived in Texas, born and raised in Texas, I spent most of my life in Texas. When I first moved away, I'd moved to Georgia and I was like, dang, I'm about 2 flights, like a month apart, to go home for the holidays. I was like, okay. Then like a year or so after that, I had friends.
Wait, so you started going twice, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Okay.
So I would fly home for Thanksgiving and then fly home for Christmas. And then the year after that, I think I had like a couple of friends that were like, oh, like, you should come down to like Austin and visit us in Austin. And like, we would love to see you. And then friends started having kids and, like life just starts to happen and it starts to evolve. And then I got to this point where I'm like, okay, it's the holiday season and I am buying a flight home to rent a car to drive to Fort Worth area, to drive to Austin, to drive to East Texas. within like a very small frame of days. And so I actually started to dread, and I hate to say it, I started to like dread a little bit the holiday season because for me, it meant going to be with people, but I was the one who was doing all of the work to make seeing everyone happen because I was the single girl that didn't have kids and usually had like a more flexible schedule with work and all of that. So when COVID happened, I didn't go home for the holidays at all. And then I was like, oh, actually,
That was kind of
oh,
fun.
it's kind of nice. Like I love my family. I want to see them, but I'm like, well, for this Thanksgiving, I actually don't feel, I'm not in my head or having to do a lot of planning for how I'm going to spend my time and how I'm going to see people. And that feels really nice. And so I'll just make a bunch of phone calls and send out some Thanksgiving greeting cards or
Oh
Christmas
wait,
greeting cards.
you do
And
that?
I try to do that. I'm not as consistent as I should be. Like that's my pitfall. But I was like, yeah,
Or
I
as you want to
can
be, I guess.
exactly. Yeah, there's that word should. But yeah, I was like, I can still be connected with my peeps, let them know that I love them and I care about them without completely draining myself over the span of a couple of days.
It's so funny that we have such opposite mentality. Like I literally have zero pressure from anybody in my life to come see them. Like if I were to just be like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing Thanksgiving in the Cayman Islands and Christmas in Bali," like literally I would have no one in my life that would complain.
Wow. I
And
definitely would have had people in my life that,
but I
that would have
would want that.
complained.
Like I think that also added to my feeling of loneliness.
Okay. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Like, I have always sort of operated my life under a certain amount of obligation where there may be things that you want to do, but what about the other people in your life and what are their needs and what's going to make them feel good or make them feel bad? And taking all of that into consideration for the longest was the absolute biggest driver in my life. And then getting to my late 30s, I'm like, actually, I think it's time for me to put me first. Like, I saw this video with Issa Rae, and she's like, it's me season. And I was like, yes, it's me season. Like, it's time for me to just do what feels good to me. So now, like most years, I'll stay in LA for Thanksgiving, enjoy my time by myself, and just relax and catch up on the things I need to catch up on. And then for Christmas, I normally now just like go home for multiple weeks. So I'll go to Texas for like 2 to 3 weeks
That's great.
because
There's so
I
many
want to
people
make
to
sure
see.
that, yeah, like there's so many people to see. I want to make sure like no one feels slighted. And that's how I've been able to really balance it.
So when you're by yourself, what are your strategies for not feeling lonely?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways to plug into community. Like, even if you don't have a ton of friends, even if you don't have a big community, you can find communities that already exist and tap into those to feel some sense of togetherness and just not being by yourself for the holidays. So, one of my favorite things to do is to volunteer. So, finding places where they're serving a holiday meal and they need people to come help support that. Like, how can you feel lonely when you're in a room beaming with gratitude from people that are just happy to have a piece of turkey and a scoop of mashed potatoes with some gravy, hopefully? It's really, really
100%.
hard to feel like you're by yourself when
100%.
you're just around people who are doing good with good vibes, wanting to make the world a better place, wanting to provide a little bit of comfort on that specific day for that specific moment, even if it's temporary. It's still a really powerful feeling
It's the
to tap into.
best. I think whenever, like, my favorite quote is like, whenever you're feeling helpless, go help somebody else.
Absolutely. And so I think for the holidays, that is 100% one of the best things that you can do. Is just where can you tap in? Where can you volunteer? And there are numbers of organizations that are like larger chain organizations, like the Red Cross is normally doing something. There's an organization called Meals on Wheels. They normally have some form of holiday dinner that they're doing, or even, and I used to do this with my grandma as a little girl, you can sign up to be a driver to go drop meals off to the elderly and the shut in. So I try to do that. There's also
Do you do that
things
every year?
I do that every year. Yeah, I do that every year. And then I also will try to find a local organization that has an angel tree. Angel tree kids are kids that just need like a little bit of brightness in their life. And it's crazy. People don't realize that, like, when you're rooted into the system where you're getting help from the government or getting help from different organizations, there's normally a very long process that you're going through to prove that you're in need, to prove that you have a low income, to prove that you qualify to be getting this support. And people forget about the folks that fall into the fray where it's like, especially in the times that we're in right now, so many companies are laying people off. I haven't been laid off, but recently I've been in the mix of an organization that just had a massive layoff and all of the stress that that causes. And let's say you have kids and you get laid off right before the holidays. You don't have enough time to qualify for all of these larger programs. And so angel trees are a really good way for people who are in need in that moment. Maybe it's temporary, to just have a little bit of levity in their life and have a little bit of support. And so
Y'all hear that music?
someone's like blasting Bob Marley right now, and I don't know where that came from.
Wow.
Hopefully no one can hear it. Or maybe we should just dance along with it. I don't know. So I think that's a really great way to tap into community as well. And if you've never done an angel tree, it's actually like a really fulfilling experience because you get your angel, you look at what they say they want or what they need, you go shopping, you buy that, and then you actually get to take it to them in their home and drop it off and see the kids' reactions.
Just love that. I've never done that.
It's like a pretty
I
awesome
love
feeling.
that.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
That must have been what Ted Lasso did in start of season 2. I haven't finished it, but I do remember them dropping off gifts at kids' houses.
Probably something like that. I haven't seen it at all. But yeah, so love doing that. And then also, I would say this is going to sound slightly counter, but living in an area that's slightly touristy, Santa Monica and LA are so sleepy. Like, they're so sleepy on actual holiday days. And so, even though there are a lot of things that will be shut down, if you've ever wanted to be a tourist in your own city, to just like go see the sights, check out the architecture, go to the parks, like go enjoy the city naturally for what it is, a holiday day is the absolute best time to do that. Yeah, like I love like taking walks on the beach and to get up on Thanksgiving morning and walk down to the Santa Monica Pier. There's no one there. Like, you literally have it to yourself to just enjoy and explore and take in like all this street art and the smells. And yeah, it's just, I love exploring during the holidays or taking like a little trip. Like, maybe there's really cool like national monument or national park, which here where we live, there's so many different national parks. Again, like the holidays are a good time, maybe not to go officially because some things may be shut down, but just to go and enjoy this space and enjoy what is open when you're really not going to have a whole lot of competition getting around.
I love that. Okay, so it seems like, to summarize what both Ashley and I have talked about, if you're stuck in the mindset like I was, which was, I hate to say it, but it was sort of a victim mindset of, oh, I'm single and I don't have a partner, so I'm going to feel sorry for myself. If you're stuck in that, like, take it from us. It's really, there's so much that you can do to make this season joyous and to feel connected and to feel the spirit of this season if you take it upon yourself to put a little effort in and make this holiday the way you want it.